Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Ask the Expert session. I'm Ben Vandenberg, Principal Platform Evangelist for Adobe, and joining me, I have a number of different experts where we're going to be talking about document automation from APIs to low-code automation using things like Power Platform and some of the great Adobe connectors that are available within the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform ecosystems. So what I'd like to do as part of this session is do a couple things. First, I'm going to introduce some of our experts. I'm going to give you a brief, just kind of tell you what it is that we are doing between Adobe and Microsoft through some of our low-code connectors. And then really all this time is about you, being able to answer your questions during this, because we have a huge wealth of knowledge on this session, and we want to make sure that we can get all your answers answered. So there is a Q&A pod in there, so feel free to drop your questions into there, and we will try to answer as many of the questions as we can in the time allotted. We'll try to answer live, but also we might answer directly some of your questions through chat as well. So for introductions here, again, I'm Ben Vandenberg. I'm on the Adobe side of things. I focus on some of our document cloud platform, also some of our integrations into the Microsoft ecosystem, and how we create low-code automation type of workflows for our customers. Ray, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Raymond Camden. I am a developer evangelist on the team, focused heavily on our APIs, our SDKs, also working with Power Automate quite a bit as well.
Nikhil?
Hi, I'm Nikhil Kumar. I'm a senior engineering manager in the Adobe. I manage the team of PDF services and responsible for building the APIs for PDF services, bringing in the AI capabilities in our APIs, as well as surfacing those APIs in ecosystem like Power Automate, etc.
Awesome. And Rakesh?
Hi, I'm Rakesh. I'm a product manager with the Power Automate team. So I've been partnering very closely with Adobe's Acrobat Sign team to launch certain new embedded capabilities that we announced yesterday.
Awesome. Cool. So there's a couple of things that are what's available from a development and low code perspective, as well as some of the announcements that Rakesh mentioned that we can talk a little bit more about. But just to kind of level set everybody on things, part of our whole philosophy is how do we help empower people to create digital document workflows to help improve productivity. And one of the ways that we're doing that is we're taking our tools and services that many people know, like Adobe Acrobat, Acrobat Sign, and all those types of tools that you use to create documents, and making those available as services that are available within the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform ecosystem. And these are different types of services throughout a document lifecycle, whether it's helping dynamically create documents based on the data that you have within your Dataverse or SharePoint or other types of systems that you can connect through Power Automate, capturing electronic signatures, being able to take many of those tools from Acrobat, like being able to create PDFs, combine, bringing those all together to be able to use those as services inside to automate, be able to capture form information through our Adobe Experience Manager forms, as well as being able to extract content out of PDF documents so you can reuse, republish that content, or bring that into your Dataverse and push that into things like natural language processing tools in there. Every single one of these services are available as connectors within Microsoft Power Platform, so you can leverage those within Power Automate and Logic apps, as well as if you are working to create code-based applications, there's also a variety of different SDKs there. So we're working, and along with that, a lot of these different APIs we're also making available through pre-built add-ins into the Microsoft ecosystem, like add-ins to Microsoft Teams, add-ins into SharePoint, as well as going in the other direction as of now taking some of those Microsoft technologies and integrating them into Adobe products so you can use them natively inside of there. So again, ask your questions. We can see your questions coming in, and we're happy to answer any one of those as we are going along here. But I wanted to start off and just talk about one of the questions that often comes in is that there's a lot of different documents that you want to capture information out of those documents, because those PDF documents have been maybe around for decades and you want to get that information out. So I wanted to start off, maybe Ray, would you be able to answer, are there ways that Adobe has been making things available to be able to extract information out of PDFs?
Absolutely, and it just so happens we have an extract API, and this will return an incredible amount of information about your PDFs. Every single possible item on the PDF, the text of that item, the position, the font, the styling, more than you can imagine being available inside a PDF. This will dig everything out. It will return this in a JSON format, so if you want to do post-processing, you can do that. It will also extract things like images and tabular data as well. And what's really interesting is that the tabular data comes out in a format that can be parsed, so you can do more processing on tables that you may have within your PDFs. That's like the superpower tool. We also have a simpler properties API, which is more of a metadata call to get information about your PDF documents.
Thank you for that. And there was a question that came in from one of our visitors here that was asking about, are there tools that we have for being able to create documents, not just necessarily with Acrobat, but also some of our Creative Cloud applications like InDesign to dynamically create things like contact sheets and things like that. So first off, when it comes to things like Creative Cloud and Document Cloud, they are different applications. InDesign, we don't have connectors inside of Power Platform at this point in time. One of the things that we've been doing is we've been making available a number of different APIs online, like the Photoshop API, and we're looking at some other types of cloud-based services to leverage Creative Cloud applications. We haven't made those available within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, but it would be certainly interesting to see some of the ways you could do that. However, one of the ways that you could, if you were looking to kind of create a contact sheet, that would be something that you could use the document generation service as part of our PDF services to generate a document based on a Word template. Ray, do you want to maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the document generation API, it lets you take a Microsoft Word file and you would use it like you normally would. You set styles, set headers and stuff like that. But then you could add tokens to it that via our API will be replaced with your data. So the simplest example is hello name, and that name could be any data that you have within your system. We could take that Microsoft Word file with that token, we could take your data and we can output a dynamic PDF based on that. It does a lot more than just simple token replacement. You can have dynamic tables, you can have dynamic images, you can have conditional type statements where if you're creating an offer letter, for example, and some people get a starting bonus, you can have that section dynamically showed up based on what you're offering this person. So the document generation API is one of the most powerful ones. It's also, I think, as a developer, it's one of the easiest ones to use as well.
Awesome. I wanted to touch on one of the questions, which was actually centered around one of the announcements that we had with Adobe and Microsoft yesterday, that's centered around embedding Power Automate inside of Adobe Acrobat Sign. So one of the things that was in that announcement is that we've been working really closely with Rakesh's team to tie in things together here to allow you to be able to trigger flows within Adobe Acrobat Sign within that interface without having to leave there. You're running all your automated flows inside of Power Automate seamlessly there. So that gives a whole bunch of flexibility of not just having something that's electronic signature, but you can also then route that for approvals within Teams approvals. You could connect it to all the different connectors within Power Automate. Rakesh, do you want to maybe talk a little bit more about some of the things that we've been doing around our embed scenarios with Power Automate there?
Absolutely. I think, yeah. So Ben, as you mentioned, the key value prop is that a seamless integrated experience for Adobe users. So as they're creating documents for signature, and typically what we have seen is that there are workflows that are typically associated with a signature event, right? So what the integration with Power Automate enables Adobe users would do is to really build those workflows inline without ever needing to leave Adobe Sign, so that you get the full experience of Power Automate to build workflows, to create workflows, use hundreds of templates or a few dozens of templates that are very specific to Sign, and then manage those workflows, share with your coworkers, and execute them on the go, all of them inline. So what we really hope to do is that really remove any kind of friction that Adobe users would have in automating their scenarios that are adjacent to document signature events. So I'll post a link to the we announced this capability yesterday, and it's going as a limited preview starting end of next month. So there's a sign up process. I'll post the link in the chat if anybody's interested in signing up for that, and the broader announcement as well. So we're really looking forward to people trying this new capability. And over the next months, we will expand the scope of who all can participate, and will be broadly available in the coming months and all.
I think one of the things that I love about that is it's also just a testament to some of the things that Adobe and Microsoft are working together to think about it, not just in the context of how some Adobe technology exists within the Microsoft ecosystem, but how we're kind of adopting some of the ways that people work so that regardless of where you're coming from, you're working within both ecosystems. So I wanted to touch on one of the questions, Nikhil. There was a question from somebody who asked if there's for startups or developer programs, is there a way for them to be able to get access and learn and maybe get started using the document services APIs without having to go through a whole contractual process? Is there a process that startups and developers can go through?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a trial program, and we provide 1,000 transactions free in the trial program, and anybody can sign up within 5 minutes. In fact, less than 5 minutes, get a credential and get started with our SDKs. So we have a very extensive and a very seamless, frictionless trial program, and anybody with a basic coding skills, or in fact with the low code and no code platforms, any citizen developer can come and start trying out our APIs.
And I'll just go ahead, Rick. It's 1,000 transaction in 6 months. So if you've ever signed up for something and got busy and your trial ended, we give you a very large amount of time to try it out.
Now, speaking of which, Ray, does this also have REST APIs?
Yes, yeah. So we have SDKs for Node, Java, and .NET. Python specifically for the Extract API. For anything else outside of that, there is a REST-based API. We have documentation for that, and if you are familiar with Postman, we have a Postman collection that you could download to kind of help get you started on working with those APIs quicker.
Rakesh, maybe you can clarify this, because I think sometimes this is confusing for some people. When it comes to Power Automate is awesome, but there's also things like Logic Apps. So for people who are looking to kind of implement some of these low-code document automation tools, when would they use Logic Apps versus Power Automate?
Yeah, so if you take a step back, so Power Automate is the low-code tool for automation, workflow automation, and which actually runs on top of Logic Apps. So the real differentiation is what's the context of the user. So we believe that there are fewer developers than there are people than what is required. So that's why we believe the low-code aspect would really help bridge the gap, bridge the talent gap that we see across the industry. So if you're a citizen developer who are working with low-code, no-code tools, then Power Automate is the way to automate your scenarios. But if you're a real professional developer who's very comfortable with Azure, who's very familiar with the infrastructure as well as the PaaS layer of Azure, who's very comfortable with app services, containers, and who are managing the entire thing end to end, then you would use Logic Apps to kind of automate that. So underlying is the same connector. For example, Adobe Sign and PDF services, you all have the same connector that work across different both Power Platform as well as Logic App. It's a function of where you are operating in. If you are familiar with, if you are mostly on the VS Code, GitHub, then you probably are likely to use more of Logic Apps. Whereas if you're more on low code and purely using the low code tools and Adobe Sign and Document Cloud, you're more likely to use the Power Automate capabilities.
Awesome, thanks there. Nikhil, you may or may not know the answer to this question, but especially like PDF metadata, so things like author, subject, keywords, the XMP metadata inside those PDFs. Do our services have an ability to be able to edit some of that metadata?
Not right now. Right now we have API to read the metadata from PDF. That's an API that we have. But editing is something which is not available right now. It's there on the roadmap, but yeah, not there right now.
All right. And Ray, there was a question around if you have a document and you want to break it down to each page and separate page with separate file names from a field that exists on each page. Is that possible with our services?
So I saw that question. The second half, just splitting. We absolutely have an API on that. So given a PDF input, you can split that as you see fit. Your particular beginning of that question about splitting based on a form field, I think inside the document, I don't believe we can do that. But if you want to reach out to me with more particulars on that, I could try to help you out.
Actually, I think there was also an article we had on Adobe Tech Blog that was actually talking about splitting based on extract data.
Yeah, it would just about, I still want to know more about like exactly how he or she wants to split, like what are they looking for, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. And maybe with form field data, that might be, I'm not exactly sure how we would do that. But if you were looking for just general information inside of the document, so just like the textual information, that is something that you could potentially use the extract service to get the information about the content, tell you like, so then you could go through and iterate and find these are the places where this specific thing is mentioned inside the text, and then get the page name, and then based on that, use the split service to split that. But yeah, we'd probably need to understand a little bit more of the specific use case, but there's probably at least some stuff that we can do to address some of your needs there. All right, the next question here is any plans to support document extraction for content capture for syntax or Viva topics pages? Anybody have a good answer on that one? I think my answer would be most of your Viva topics pages are probably web-based pages, and if that's the case, Most of the services, especially for extraction services, those are for content that are based in PDF format. So if you're extracting content from stuff within Syntex or Viva topics pages, those are probably already web content, so you probably use a different tool to be able to do that.
And if those are PDFs, then I think Extract API will do a fairly good job. Just that it will extract the content, but then there has to be an additional code parsing that JSON and then kind of making a sense out of it. One thing I would say is that our Extract API extracts the content as well as the syntax and the structure around the content. So I think it makes it easy to understand what exactly the content is. So it is not just the content, but as well as the intent of the document that is extracted in the response.
Ooh, this is a fun one. Is there an API that can take JSON structure and then combine it with a PDF template and then return it as a merged PDF in a browser to a user? Ray, any thoughts on that?
Well, the document generation API is very close to that if your input can be a Word template instead. So if you want to take a Word template and set that up the way you want and put it in the tokens and stuff, then you could definitely merge it with JSON data coming from anywhere, your database, your flat files, SharePoint, etc. So if you're okay with me changing that question to, can I take a Word document as a template and my JSON data and get a dynamic PDF out, then the answer is absolutely yes.
I'll add to that. One of the things that we also have that we haven't highlighted as much is we also have our PDF Embed API, which is a web-based client to be able to render a PDF on a web page. And one of the things that you could potentially do is take that generated PDF that Ray just described, and if you're doing like a Power Automate flow and you have it based on an HTTP request, you could have the response be actually a page that has the PDF Embed API embedded in it to provide that PDF. Or if you didn't even want to use the PDF Embed API and you just wanted to have that provide a response with the generated document, you could do that using the HTTP request trigger and response within Power Automate there. All right, so the next question here is talking about maybe licensing. So we have the Adobe PDF Services connector. We have Acrobat Sign. Rakesh, if I understand correctly, the Acrobat Sign connector is a standard connector within Power Automate. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
And the Adobe PDF Services connector is a premium connector. Although I think one of the things that Rakesh, you were touching on is part of the partnership of what we're doing with Acrobat Sign and bringing Power Automate inside of there. That means that our Acrobat Sign users will be able to use some of their premium connectors within Acrobat Sign. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. Yeah. So I think it's really taking away all kinds of friction or hurdles from the user from using premium capabilities when they are in the context of Sign. So if you're building anything using the Sign connector, and if you want to connect to a premium system, like for example, you could take a document and upload it to SharePoint, which is again a standard. You don't need a premium license for that. But if you want to upload it to, if you want to make a update to a Dynamics 365 system and based on some signature event, if you want to connect to a Salesforce or upload it in a Dropbox, all of these are premium connectors or premium connectivity capabilities. You would be able to do that in the context of Adobe Sign.
That's awesome. Now, one of the things that I was then curious about is this is actually related to templates. And Ray, maybe you can answer this one. Is you mentioned Word-based templates, but what about if you have like HTML? Is it possible to create templates that are based on HTML?
Yeah, so we have a file to PDF API and supports Office Docs and supports HTML as well. And one of the features of the HTML page to PDF is the ability to have dynamic data in there. So you would send the HTML to our API, you would send your data, and you would use a little bit of JavaScript in your code to handle saying, when that JSON data comes to me, update the DOM to change portions of it to match your data. So it's a bit more of a advanced use case versus just Word document to PDF, but it is supported.
And so that almost sounds like you could have like a mini website that is essentially generating that document, so you can have the JavaScript logic inside of there, right?
Yes, yeah. It's running in the environment of our API in terms of when it's converted. So if you're a JavaScript person like me, don't think full client-side JavaScript, but you can do template type things like the document generation API.
Awesome, very cool. There's another question that's talking about being able to populate information in documents from Power Apps. Now, the answer is actually there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. And it somewhat depends on whether it's like a document that you're maybe routing for signature, you want to populate fields into there, or you want to generate as a document. So we have connectors that if you are using, say, like a Canvas-based app, Power App, you can take any of the same connectors within Power Automate to be able to pass that information into the documents to either generate the document or populate fields in a document using Acrobat Sign to route that for signature. Those connectors already exist. You can easily tie those into there. In the model-driven app world, there's actually even more options that you have. You have the connectors for Power Platform you can leverage, which allows you to connect the dots just like as you would with Canvas apps to either generate documents or send those for signature, populate fields into there. Or the other option is that there's also pre-existing connectors for Microsoft Dynamics 365 that you can use for Acrobat Sign to populate information through there through pre-existing add-ins. Both of those have pros and cons. One's an easy package you can install, and all the information about your agreements can then be stored within Dataverse there. Or if you want more flexibility from a workflow side, then the connectors within Power Platform give you the great options within there. All right, so I had another question, and actually this is just going to be a kind of a round robin, especially when we talk about things like document automation, and especially how we're tying in with Power Platform. Maybe you can give one thing that is like the thing that's exciting you the most about some of the things that we're doing together between Adobe and Microsoft. And Rakesh, maybe I'll start with you. And we'll go around the table.
Yeah, I think we covered the main things earlier. So I think there's two things. One is the embedded experience itself, so that the user is always in context of their documents workflow and documents and signature workflows that they're creating. So there's an inline experience, and there's the seamless experience of using premium capabilities along with Adobe Acrobat Sign, right? So that you don't need to go and purchase a premium Power Automate license to kind of avail the connectivity and the capabilities, the combination of Adobe and Microsoft providing. So that's to me, that's the thing that I'm most excited about.
Nikhil?
Yeah, I think the most exciting thing is that we are kind of building automation which helps automate those repetitive and mundane things which earlier people used to do day in, day out using products like Acrobat. Now there are APIs, and automating them is so simple that anybody can kind of look at a cookie cutter template and then simply use it to automate this thing. So it really helps. I use these kind of automation day in, day out for my various kind of work, and we are really bringing down the barriers for people to use the automation and kind of automating the repetitive works.
And Ray?
I think what I'm really excited about is using the automation aspects of Power Automate and mixing our PDF extract APIs and then taking what we extract and doing natural language AI processing on it. So you can imagine, like, we dump a bunch of PDFs into a SharePoint folder, and Power Automate fires up, runs our PDF extract API, and we could tell you these PDFs, they talk about blah, they talk, they talk about foo, they have pictures of blah blah blah. That all can be done without writing code, which is awesome.
I agree. I think that is awesome. So we've come to time. Thank you, everybody, for coming to your to the session. As a couple of quick kind of finishing up things, if you want to learn more about some of these different things that we're talking about, you can go over to our partner showcase page, where we have a number of different sessions and demos where you can get to know and understand more, and also reach out to us if you have some more info, want to learn more about some of that stuff. Along with that, if you want to also kind of get started and figure out how to start creating some of your own flows, you can go to the link here, which is the adobe.com/go/power-automate, and that has a number of resources to help you get started. But don't forget to go to the provide your feedback on this session, because we always love to hear your feedback. And with that, I'd like to thank everybody as part of our experts here for taking their time to jump on here to answer any of the questions that are your questions, and enjoy the rest of Build. Thank you for coming.